minutes? We're good now? Okay. Jeff.
Nistam ewi atamiskata gok mina enanas komak mamo tai magutagisra mi wisyak to utsip matamak matsuin. Kaskawat nugi magap mai tigawian mina itagagisiga taswan Jeff Wastesicoot. It's pretty ironic to be in two Nakota communities. Last year I was in Paul Band during the National Addiction Week. And here I am today. I come to share a little bit with you on a recovery process and my journey of my life. And I know that we all share a commonality as peoples of these lands. I went through residential school for 2 years until the school had burnt down in the early 60s. And I further went to the day school scholars, what they call them. And I also am a 60 scoop survivor. I don't know why I went. In the early 60s, I was removed by the Indian agent with 7 of my siblings. And I have no sisters. There were just 7 boys. And we were removed and taken down to the United States in the early 60s. And while going down there, I couldn't speak a word of English because my first language has always been Cree. I lived there for 16 and a half years. I grew up in Albuquerque. At the age of 14, I lost my brother through gang violence. And I remember my brother being murdered on the streets of Albuquerque. And in this time, I had a lot of street smarts, and I found the young man that took my brother's life. At the age of 14, I ended up taking a life. And in this time, they sent me to a mental institution. I was the very first one at the age of 13, the youngest person to be in a detox center. And being in this mental hospital, they did a lot of damage to me, where they gave me shock treatments, put me in a straitjacket, and just really doped me up where I couldn't help myself. I further went and was incarcerated at Red Wing, Minnesota, and further was transferred to Albuquerque. In this time, I stood trial, and that they were going to retry me as an adult when I reached the age of 18. I don't know if my ears are echoing or I think it's just a little too loud.
Good now?
Can you guys hear me? Okay, they can hear me now.
Good.
Yeah. So it's in this time that I went into this institution. It was a maximum security And there I got a sense of something. I got this sense of a smell that I remembered as a child smelling this smell. And there was one of the security guards named Joe Cortez. And there's many, not the boxing guy, the boxing ref. There's many Cortezes there. And he was drinking something that I caught whiff of. I smelt it. I said, Joe, what's that stuff you're drinking? He says, it's mint tea. I said, can I smell that? And I kept this tea bag, and it would take me back. I wanted to go and find my parents, my mother and my father. It's in this time that I was first introduced to who I was. They had taken me to go see an elder. And this elder that they took me to had long braids, had scars. He said, Jeff, do you know that you're an Indian? And of course, that term was freely used back then, Indian. And of course, I said to them, I'm not Indian. I'm Latino, man, you know. I'm Mexican, because I fit right in with the brown skin, you know, even dressed like them, even begin to learn their language. And it's in this time that they took me to the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation to go see an elder. And there I saw this man with long hair. And he said to me, come and sit in front of me. He said, take your shirt off. And I was really afraid of him because there was a sweat lodge right behind him. And there was rocks that were being heated up. And he was going to take me into this lodge. It's in this time that he put his hand right here and he began to speak his language, his Lakota language. And I saw tears running down as he prayed for me, for I was lost. He further said, let's go in, grandson. And my response to him, he says, I'm not your grandson, because I came with a chip on my shoulder. He said, go in. As we went in there, he began to chant with the drum. And I was really afraid of this lodge because I thought this old man was going to burn me. I thought this was hell, you know, because they used a pitchfork. Because in the Bible stories I would hear that, you know, the devil's going to stab you with this fork and throw you into the fire. So I didn't know. And it was quite dark in there. As he prayed, sitting in amongst the ceremony, I noticed that I felt love for the first time. I didn't know what love was. I didn't know what kindness was. I further went back to the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation in 1972 to another ceremony that they took me to. And they called this a sun dance. I didn't know what it was. I heard whistles and drums and people dancing to the beat. Every whistle that went off was going to the exact same beat as this drum. And what was so unique about this ceremony, I was really, really impressed with this ceremony, how powerful it was. because they were, I think, through these whistles, they were calling these 3 helicopters to hover over this lodge. I said, wow, every day, these helicopters, once the drums and the whistles went off, these helicopters would show up. I didn't know this is when the time they bared arms at Wounded Knee. I further understood as time went on that these things were outlawed for our people. In returning back to the institution, I kept this tea bag here with me. And when the smell would go away, I would wet it and the smell would come back. I wanted to go home. Any child in care today, it doesn't matter if there's drinking or violence, they want to go home. I know what that feeling is like of wanting to go home. In these survival things that I picked up from a residential school to learn how to fight, when I didn't have things, I had to learn how to steal. In the street sense, the mentality on the streets is kill or be killed. And it still exists today. In 1979, I went on the run. I sold a lot of marijuana on the streets and began to sell cocaine in my time in duration down there. It's in this time that we all have a sense of wanting to belong somewhere. We need to belong to somebody. But we need, because we are spiritual people, we need to belong somewhere. And that I didn't have. Being such a good actor, I put a light bulb, a fluorescent light bulb on my head to heat up my head. And I played sick. And when the guards would come around, I'd shake. And they'd come and touch me. This young boy is burning up. We need to take him to the infirmary. They took my temperature with a thermometer, and I stuck that in hot water. And it would read 119. Well, you know, I'd be dead by then. So I had to cool it off. I was kind of smart, eh? To 106, so they took me by ambulance to the hospital. And the guard left the door open that much. And I took off. I went on the run. From Albuquerque, I ended up getting a gun and robbing 3 Walgreens stores at gunpoint. And I knew how to drive, and I stole a vehicle. And I began to make my way to Minneapolis to pick up my oldest brother. When we got to the border, the Canadian border, it was dark. And we were going to walk across the border because that's the only way we were going to get there. To walk through the bush. And my brother was afraid. I said, don't be afraid. I said, there was an old man that taught me how to pray. So we sat down. As dark approached, I said, God, whoever you are, I don't know what I'm doing, but look after us. Look after us. At the Emerson border, We walked 38 hours across the field because we didn't want to be seen on the roads. And we walked into Winnipeg, Manitoba. This was the longest journey for me to come home. It's in this time that we made contact with street people. And one of them that were laying on the street was my late uncle. I said, we're trying to go home. He says, well, come with me. We'll go phone. And of course, there was, phones all over the streets. We made a collect call. And they got accepted. 2 days later, we had bus tickets to go to northern Manitoba. We were supposed to go to Wastesicoot, that there would be an airplane, a charter waiting for us. The next 2 days we didn't eat. We had to sleep on the streets. But we did make it home. Upon returning, my heart fluttered, wanting to find my mother. When we got on this airplane, I was just saying, wow, what a homecoming this is going to be. The red carpet treatment, All our relatives, our aunties, uncles are going to be there, grandparents coming to hug us. When the plane dropped us off at the dock, there was nobody there. So we started asking questions as to where my mother lived. So she lives just over the hill. Down there, you'll see a potato shack. She lives there. So as I walked in there, I opened the door, and you could just smell the reek of alcohol, the home brew. And there was a woman laying on there. I said, there's nobody here. Told my brother Bob, there's nobody here but this woman that's passed out. So we sat and waited for her to wake up. And she woke up and she looked at us and she told us, get the F out of here. I said, wait a minute. I said, is your name Olive? She said, yeah, why? I think we were your sons. I'm Jeff. This is Bob. She stood up, said, say that again. I said, I'm Jeff. This is Bob. And she collapsed and fainted. I began to become resentful to her. Because all this time, all these years that my parents didn't love me or even care about us. But something caught my spirit to go home. That year, in 1979, when I made it home, the Bureau of Indian Affairs and the FBI wanted to expedite us back to the States to go stand trial as an adult. And they were going to take me to California in 1979 to try me as an adult. And if I was to be tried over there, there was a death penalty that was going to be imposed upon me. But the leadership, the chief, says, you have no business on these lands, get off of here. You're not taking these boys are home. And that was the greatest thing that my community stood up for. I begin to remember, because I couldn't speak my language, I felt like I was an imposter in my own community. people would make fun of me because I couldn't speak my language. And I would remember what the old man taught me. He prophesied to me, says, grandson, one day you're going to be doing these ceremonies. So I told my brother, I said, we're going to do something today. What I was taught by these Lakotas. He said, what are we going to do? I said, we're going to make a sweat lodge. Eh? Didn't know what we were doing. We took 8 willows and we stole a bunch of blue plastic tarps. We heated up 7 stones. And we took all these stones in there. My brother says, what are we supposed to be doing in here? He says, we're supposed to pray and we're supposed to sing songs. I said, I don't know how to pray and I don't know how to sing these songs. Just close your eyes, shut up and close your eyes and feel it. While I started splashing, you know. And my brother said, oh yeah, man, I could feel it. Cool, eh? So the word got out in the community that younger, same ages, young people, 17, 18-year-old, started coming to this lodge. Of course, we had to steal more blue plastic tarps. And of course, it was about who can withstand the heat, eh? We just pour it on. And for some reason, it was attracting the young people. Even young women were starting to come. I first learned a Christian song called Amazing Grace. For the very first time, I sang Amazing Grace in the sweat lodge because I didn't know any better. Towards the fall, we were attracting so many. That a constable van and an RCMP van showed up at my mother's place. And I said, you need to come with us. They put me in the RCMP vehicle and I knew where we were going. Down this dirt road. Right to this lodge. The community members were there. A lot of elders. And they said, is this you doing this? This is going to stop now. This is devil worshiping, is what the elders said to me. As they doused gasoline on this lodge and they lit it on fire, and they removed these rocks from the pit, and they buried a Bible. And they had a piece of paper, a legal size paper. It said band council resolution that I was to vacate Cross Lake, never to return with these practices. They put me on the ferry and drove me out of town with this piece of paper that I was being BCR'd from my home community. All I had was my rubber boots on, a pair of jeans, and a shirt. For the very first time, I was lost. My people don't want me. Nobody's ever wanted me in my whole life. This was the very first time suicide entered my thoughts. For the very first time, I tried to swallow this lump, because that's what we do when we suppress the spiritual pain. I tried so hard to swallow, and it wouldn't go down. Tears kept rolling out. I couldn't stop crying for the very first time. And I said, I'm going to end this here. I'm going to end it. It's in this time that I really wanted to hang myself. I thought about shredding my pants and making a noose to hang from a tree. But I thought to myself that I didn't want to be found hanging there naked. That wasn't cool. So I devised another plan, that the next vehicle that was going to come by, I was going to allow it to run over me. And I couldn't stop crying. So I built this little blind right next to the road, bushes, that I was just going to run out there. My chance came when I saw this cloud of dust coming from the north end where the ferry landing was. This was my time to end it all. I was able to swallow. As this vehicle came and it stopped, and I kind of just waited there. And out stepped this Suburban. There was 3 elders that stepped out of there. One of them was my Mgbhlm, my grandfather. My thoughts were, oh shit, they told my Mgbhlm, he's here to give me more heck. By this time I'd learned a few words. My grandfather came out and he said, "No Sam, no Sam." And here, he would say, "Biggie, come home." So I stepped out onto the road, this gravel road, and this is what my grandfather done. He opened up his arms like this. "Biggie, come home." And I walked right at him, almost like I had tunnel vision. I walked right into his chest, and I cried. I cried. They said, "Grandson, they can't kick you off. If this is what you desire, I will teach you this way of life." My teachings began in 1979. My grandfather had asked me, "Grandson, if I were to give you a knife and an axe, are you able to survive out here in the wilderness?" And I said, "No, I will teach you." I struggled in the beginning because I was a musician. I loved playing in bar rooms, you know. I would make the girls scream and so forth. I'm a very talented musician. And I even play a fiddle. I sang and done all these things. He said to me, "You're going to have to make a choice, grandson. How are you going to serve the people? With this pipe or with this guitar?" I said, "Well, nobody comes to see you with your pipe, so I kind of don't want that. Here, with this guitar, boy, you know, I can make girls scream." It took me about 4 years to make that decision. During that 4 years, I came back with an attitude. And I got beaten up pretty bad where I ended up in a hospital. Because these 3 guys really put a beating into me. Broke my jaw, busted ribs, fractured collarbone. I was really in a bad mess. Anyway, I had to have my jaw wired shut for a month. And I said, I'm gonna get even. That day, cold day sober, I went and revenged what they'd done to me. I took a shotgun and I went shot all three of them. Not to kill them, just to strictly wound them. I shot them in the leg, shot them in the back. And I ended up going to Stony Mountain Penitentiary. I was on probation for 10 years. While in this penitentiary, I said, I don't like living this way anymore. Something's got to change. I was released to my grandfather. Unfortunately, I was the one that introduced to my community cocaine. And I could never feel good about this money. It was dirty money. Today it's rampant. That I owe something to my community is how to get out of it. So periodically I go home. In 1985 is when I lost another younger brother. They forced him to come home. They found him in Utah, and they brought him back to Canada. He only stayed with us for 3 months, and he took his life, died in my arms. You were the cause of this, I said to my parents. You were the cause of this. Why couldn't you just love us and raise us? And they had no words. I said, if my father shows up here, I'm gonna take his life. So he never came to bury his son. In 1985, I was on a journey to discover, to understand why my brother did this. We asked our elders, can you help us? Guide us. We put Cross Lake, Manitoba on the map in 1985. We lost 49 young people in 28 days' time. We hit national. All over the world heard about Cross Lake. Not as a good community. Suicides. We asked our elders for that help. They said this is the first time they've ever seen this. They couldn't help us because they couldn't even understand the term suicide. And they wondered why our young people are dying needlessly. I went to school up in north of Edmonton, Nietzsche Institute. They taught me about the effects of alcohol and drugs. But still couldn't find that answer. Why? That's what seems to be missing. Even in our own lives, why? Why am I always going down this road, you know? Why am I always in prison? Why am I always thinking this way of ending my life? Simple answer. Why do our people do drugs and alcohol? Simple, to change the way you feel. In 1987, we went and met with the Jewish community, the Jewish people in the Paul, Manitoba. And this is what they said. I had this burning question. This is when it gave birth to this term, cultural genocide. What is genocide? These two words of genocide comes in a process. It comes from two different languages, genocide. Two different languages when you speak about genocide. Geno is a form of generations. Geno meaning people. A distinct groups. Such as your First Nation is a distinct group. And this term comes from the Old English language. This next term, side, talks about, it comes from the term Latin term. It talks about to kill, to destroy. To totally annihilate it from existence. I began to take a look at this, and this was my burning question to the Jewish people. There was 4 young men accompanying this elder, and he had a hat and these curls coming down. And this is what he said. I said, how did you guys survive the Holocaust period of your genocidal that was committed onto your people? And this is what he said. I said, how did you guys heal from it? He says, we don't heal from these things, but we may recover. There's a difference. Healing comes from Catholicism, from the churches. I heal you in the name of Jesus, you know, to totally be wiped clean. That's why they have confessions every Sunday. To be totally wiped clean, not even a scar on you. Your spirit, my spirit, has a lot of scars. My body has a lot of scars. My mind, my emotions have a lot of emotional scars. I can never get rid of those. We call those atsago peso guishioina. That these scars will remain with you till the end of your time. I always speak about the women, how they bear these scars. When they have children, they have scars. And these are beautiful scars, because these scars that you carry today become your story, your own truth. And these scars will remain. This is what this elder said as he spoke in his language. In order for us to begin to recover, we share a common thing with the Indians of Canada. Why we are in Canada today is because they took all our lands. We have nothing left. But you have lands. What this land gives you a voice. The government will listen to you. So that's what you have going. In the Holocaust period of my time, I was just a child. We were in this encampment with a fence around it. The last time I saw my mother, my father, and my grandparents was they were being hurled into this gas chamber. When that siren went off, the Germans put on these gas masks and they began to drag the bodies out of there. I saw my mother being hurled into the back of this big truck. The amount of energy that was on that fence, that steel fence, it just shook. It vibrated so much from our spirits that the ground literally shook. See, that's what happened to my people. This is the reason why we harbored into Canada. It's in this Canada that we began to recognize what they're doing to the homeland people, the original people. They have now taken your people and encamped them in this makeshift concentrated camp called reservations. It was in 1979 when they got rid of the pass system. You could not leave your reservation without a permit. This angered me. When we began our recovery process, this elder said, we did not go to the white people for our recovery. We had to turn to our language and our culture. That's how we were able to recover. So what I'm saying to you, young man, turn to your language because it is a God-given language. And within that language structure, there are certain paradox and parables that are so spiritual that it's going to guide you a way of recovering. Do not turn to the white system. This elder put me on a journey to begin to break down my language. The recovery process of beginning to reorient our language, our ceremony, and our culture to an understanding. Within our language, there is no such term as non-adamant. Everything has an adamancy. Everything, our colors are all living. Everything has a living organism in it. The university is wanting to do a study on this. So again, in our language, I began to explore mahtagonnegoisuin. And this is what oppressed. To oppress people. When you oppress people from preventing them to live their creator-granted right to live, when you have stolen from them, to even steal their children, to steal their women, and to continue to destroy this, you're going to have depression. People are going to become depressed. And when people become depressed, they want to change the way they feel. What changes that feeling is the opiates, the alcohol, these drugs. mood-altering drugs. That's why so many of us become addicted. We rely on feeling better because the system has an order to continue to oppress us. All around us, we see the industry just getting richer and richer and richer. Whereas we can't even sell wood. We can't sell our minerals. So this is what I come to understand. And when you become depressed, you no longer want to live. This is where I discovered why so many of our young people are now committing suicide. Suicide overdoses are not classified as suicide, but it is. It's in the same classification. So I began to explore who I was and where I came from. I began to listen to the old people. Our creation story, it didn't come from the Bible. Our most sacred tree is that popular tree. For the Lakota people and the Dakota, their most sacred tree of how they were given life was the cotton tree. Upon attending the ceremony, this is what the Lakota people said to me. We can only teach you this much. You now need to go home to your people. I thought they didn't want me. But again, they said, you need to go learn from the purest fashion. Your elders will teach you. I began to see the laws and the stars beyond this. As an elder said to me, he says, our people run all over to look for these answers this way. They run to the governments. They run to the treatment centers. They run to programs. And the majority is programs. We've been so overwhelmed to be programmed. We don't need to be programmed. We need the well-being of our spirits. It's in this time that I began to listen to the creation story. I listened to it for 8 years. Every seasonal transition, we would go what we refer to as Saputawan, and it's a longhouse. The classification to this is the law lodge, And I began to explore the language, that our language sits in parables, shortening of language. I began to ask these questions to my elders. Why? The greatest thing that's missing in our way is why. Why are we smudging? Why are we singing this way? Why are we doing this Sundance? I began to explore the language so much, it really intrigued me. One of the things is that I ended up working after retiring from being a lineman with Manitoba Hydro. I retired from him and I began to really take a look at, I'm going to dissect these ceremonies through the language, understanding the spiritual within that tongue. I began to explore this, and I discovered in the documentations of the Jesuit priests. Within their documentations that are stored in Winnipeg, Manitoba, and that's where Human Rights head office is at. A lot of the residential school stories are stored there. And I wanted to share with you a couple quotes as to where these terms come from. And these are written in the Jesuit documents. These are the birth that they gave to a perception, what they thought these ceremonies were. They said, as we observe these peoples of these lands, we are unaware as to what they are doing. They seem to take these willows and intertwine them, where they create a little lodge, and they further heat up these stones, and they take these stones inside the lodge, where they take their sick and their ill. And when they exit from there, they come out of there perspiring of sweat. We can only assume and call it a sweat lodge. And that's that's how we're going to this. Oh, you want to have a sweat, you know. It's not a place to go and perspire. In our language, we call this matutsan versus waginogan. And I'll explain those in a bit. And another documentations to what they saw our people doing. They says, as we continue to observe these peoples of these lands, we are still unaware as to what they are doing. As we look to them from a distance, they seem to have been dancing out in the sun for the past 4 days. Thus, they must be dancing to the sun. This is what we call it now, sundance. It doesn't mean sundance in the language. Ni pagwe simoin. In order for me to transition, to give you this understanding of what that term means in our language, I have to always refer to the creation story. And you're going to understand it. Your spirit is going to understand it. Our way of systematic order, and this is what really help a lot of people open their spiritual eye and say, wow, wow, wow. And they hunger for more. Our systematic order it's always been in this way for us. Our ceremonies, our language, our culture, and the way of life. The mind is almost to balance it. The next one here is the spirit. And the action part to being able to move forward is always the body. They refer to this as a trilateral process. Programmings that are being delivered on First Nation, this doesn't exist. The treatment centers, they try to emulate what the spirit is. The white man way is in a linear pattern. I tell you, and you do. The spirit is totally out of it. There is no spirituality. In the 12-step program, and I remember this, God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. That language, I didn't even know, what the hell is serenity, you know? I don't know what serenity is. I can't balance that language or even figure it out. So it's not there for me. So it did not work. When AA came around, they done this out of ceremony. Where did Alcoholics Anonymous was developed? It was done through a ceremony called a seance ceremony. So they had to go into the spirit, how are they going to recover? But me, I didn't wish to put another label on myself. We've had so many labels, you know, what they refer to us as Indians, Indigenous, Aboriginal, Cree, band members, and First Nation. The list goes on and on. We're always wearing labels. And I don't want to put another label on myself to say, hi, I'm Jeff and I'm an alcoholic. You know, that's another label. I don't wish to carry another label. What I want to hear is to be proud to say, I'm Dakota, I'm Nehel. Those are what our Creator had given us. We need to return to that and explore it and understand it. One of the greatest roles that my mentoring ship, and for those of you that are in a recovery process, you need your elders so badly. Geteak. These are the ones that wear gray hair, that know how to live this long. You need to connect them. That is your support system. Because I'm the living testimony to that. And when they give you something, a way of life, especially to carry it for the rest of your time spent here in this world. So it's in this time that, what's our time like there? Can we take like a 5 or 10 minute break?
Yeah.
Is that possible? Is that in a contract? So let's take a 10-minute break, because my mouth is starting to really dry up. For those of you that want to have a smoke, there's an ashtray outside, and of course there's refreshments over there. So let's take 10, okay? All right, welcome back. I hope nobody falls asleep on me. I want to take you through a couple of these star charts because this is where our sacred laws lie. I began to listen to these and began to understand. I don't like the word nomadic, that all indigenous people are nomadic people. Nomadic is wanderers. They didn't have a purpose. In what now is now being told is our story of what they refer to as the truth and reconciliation, some fancy term. I have not fully recovered from the effects of what they did to our people. It is my choice to have restoration in time. I understand today why my parents couldn't look after me because of the effects of the residential school system. Why my father and my mother couldn't raise me. Why I ended up in the United States was the effects of this. But I began to look further. I began to study on my own time that I'm not proud to be treaty. It is these treaties that brought about reservations. It was these treaties that brought about our own suppression laws called the Indian Act. It was these treaties that brought about residential schools. It's hard to recover from them. But as we begin to learn the truth about who we are, there was one gift that was given to us by the Jewish people. And it's these ribbons that the pallbearers wear today. They come from the Jewish people. That was our gift to you, is what the Jewish people said to us, eh? So we honor that, just so you understand where they came from and the reasoning why. It's in this time where our creation story begins, is in the star world. Our creation story comes from these, we call these Achaguishwog, known as the Pleiades. Achagushak, the plural, is Achak. We carry the same spirit. It's in the night sky that everything is revealed to us, our spiritual truth. That is the reason why all our ceremonies are covered. It's in this time, these Pleiades, the seven sisters, seven has always been a sacred number to us. Within this structure, our laws to what we refer to you are here. Going, the ones that are coming, these are your parents. Your children. And your grandchildren. This is what's coming. Over here are your grandparents. Grandparents, your great-grandparents, and the ones that are in the spirit world. This is what connects us to the spiritual world when we do ceremonies, is these ones. And we dream about them. We dream about them. In my upbringing with my grandparents, they taught me about the land. There are different species of birds, the bird nation, on what their creation story is. I can continue naming in a language all the bird species. Wastesicoot, Amupiesis, Chatsagano, Umisagaskatsu, Umusugoesis. All these birds, they have different species, even the ducks. I was taught about them. The fish were always oriented to us on what they served the purpose. Atigameg, Osawesis, Nameo, Namegos, Wasesis, Nchopis, Okao. All these ones, they have a creation story, or it's what they serve. We say Atigameg. The white people's perception is whitefish. It's not white, you know. They have these, and every bird that they talk about, it's in colors. Yellow bird, you know, the blue bird. They're non-animate living objects. All the four-leggeds, the creation story to them, were oriented to us. Moose. We are the only ones that have a plural. For single, we call them moose. When there's many of them, we call them moosuck. The white people say moose. They can't say many moose. They just say they could, or they'll have to develop a word that sounds like this for many moose. Moose is, you know. But they don't have a plural because it's of our language. Apischimusus. All these four-leggeds, even right down to the chipmunk, you know, each of these ones have a law named to them as to the purpose that they serve here on earth. And same thing with the insects. The translation to insects is simple. It's in sections, 3 sections, so they call them in sections, hence the word insect, you know. They just describe it. We call them manchusak. They're the ones that prepare the land. They prepare it, and they serve a purpose to our environment. And all the trees and plants that's among us, why and what we call them. Waskoi, maimitos mitos, waskumeayatik. All these ones, waganaganatik, shipiwatika, diamond willows, eh? And all these ones have a creation story to them. That's why our creation story takes well over 4 years to tell. It's not, our stories didn't come from the Bible. Our most sacred tree where Creator had given us life was He put the first 10 comers on this tree. That's why we say, Oto tematik. And what that talks about is that every one of these nations were put on trees. That's why even the Nakota people refer to their most sacred tree is the cotton tree. The Japanese people refer to their most sacred tree is the bonsai tree. The black people have their own tree. We say, where we came from, the sky. And you hear this, when you get to the BC coast, you'll hear it say, totem. Because they have all their spiritual designs on that totem pole, eh? That's all their spiritual relatives. So this land ties us to our connection here, eh? Again, there's something that happened when the Nakota people came into Cree territory. The very first one that came was Sitting Bull. And he created this treaty. He had brought a medicine bundle to the people that is implied within the treaty of 6 and 4. They have a medicine clause in there. This is who brought the big drum to us, was Sitting Bull. He brought a Gistatuagan. He brought the headdress. These are things. So in this turn, the Dakota people took a Cree boy and raised it as a Dakota. And we took a Dakota boy and raised it as a Cree. That was the very first treaty that came. And this is how we came to be connected and related so closely today. And that's in the archives down south in southern Saskatchewan. There are so many different nations. We call the Nakota people Asinipoatak. When a white man says Asinipoatak, this is how it sounds, Asiniboin. These are the dream seekers. Poatak, eginte poatagik. They're the ones that went on to Mount Rushmore to go and make connection to the spirit world, and they never returned. And they developed the language. And you say, Waste. We say Wastel. It's the same language. It's so closely related, eh? That we understand each other. It's in the sky to where this came from. The 7 willows. And for those of you that have cameras, feel free to take pictures of these, because these things belong to you. I am only a caretaker to these. They belong to you. Our spiritual stories come from here, these 7 stars. And I want to share the story behind this, because I also want to clarify to you that there are 4 knowledge keepers that sit within these directions. One sits in the east, one sits in the south, the west, and the north. They can come here with a different story, but it all means the same. They can use a different language. It's all going to, mean the same. The Lakota language, they call this Niwipi, and they have their own creation stories to that. So again, within these 7 stars, within our creation story, this is the time that we begin to share the spiritual stories when the snow is on the ground. There are many ceremonies that don't jive out there because nobody's ever going to explain to you what these ceremonies are. Do you guys do round dances in this community? What is a round dance? See, that's what's missing in our ceremonies. Why? Why? When this northern doorway, see this star structure back here is in the northern skies. We say in our language, Kiwetinog, a place to go home. The spirit goes home in that direction. So it's in this time when we do this round dance, it's a perceptional name, meaning that's all they saw these Indians was going around in a circle, you know, round. They're dancing round and around, but nobody seems to know why. This is when we connect and honor our loved ones that are in the spiritual world. When you see this aurora borealis, northern lights, that's what they see, is just color, you know. The lights in the sky, they can't figure them out. In our language, we call these ones Wawatewak, the shimmering heart spirits of our people that are in the spirit world. And you see how they fluctuate back and forth. This is the dance that we're doing. And when these things are not explained to you, you just take it and not really understand why you're doing it. It's not a mating dance. It's not to go and pick up chicks or pick up guys, eh? But so many times I see that because there's no teachings that are involved with that. So, you know, of course the girls, you know, they get all dolled up, put on their long eyelashes, and they dance like this, eh? My God, eh? And of course the young guys, they don't know any better too, they're just buffed up, you know. This is to honor your ancestors. This one we're talking about, this is what we're honoring. That we ask them, this ceremony, we lift the pipe and we feed the spirit, the food, and we have our giveaways there to bless other people. That even in the transitions that we go through of our own grief and loss, this is the whole purpose to this. That you now filter this down. There's 2 ways to think about your loved one. And this is what the elders have taught me about grief and recovery. That you must now journey with your loved one and find a place and home for here. That a spirit never dies. This journey, you can think 2 ways about your loved one that you have lost. You can think about how they left you, whether it's violence, drugs, alcohol, diseases. But if you keep them up here, they're always going to make you cry. You're always going to cry. But if you honor them in this recovery process of how they were given life, how Creator gave them life, don't think about the bad things. You may choose one, only one, and that's your choice. Whether you want to remember them, how they died, because they will always make you cry. And when they make you cry, you're going to want to change the way you feel. I'm lonely. I should have been there. You begin to blame yourself, and then you do drugs and alcohol simply because you want to change the way you feel. But when you honor them, you're dancing with them again, you know, and you honor their life. When I began this recovery process of losing my brother, at the last ceremony I did for him, 4 years, This is what came out of my mouth from here. Thank you, Creator, for allowing me to have my brother this long. I will always love him, and I will always feed him. That's why in every ceremony, we feast for them, eh? So honor them. Again, I wish we had more time, but maybe one day I'll come back and visit you guys, because I'm just next door over here. This story takes quite a bit to begin to understand it. A lot of times when we don't speak the language, what happens in this lodge? Some say we go in the prayer. Well, we don't exclude prayer in anything that we do. And wanting to bring the English version so that one may begin to spiritually comprehend, we do this in a transition that we come from the four universes. In the biblical sense, they call them the four heavens. In our creation story, we begin to understand that there's four worlds that sit here, four universes. We understand that this is Aski, our Earth, our solar system. We know that this world evolves around clockwise. It moves this way. With all the star structures here of how we were to be guided in this transition, we understand that within this structure, we know that the wind spirit comes from a place that astrologers call it Saturn. The ring around it, Yutinachak. Maskoshiachak is the greenery. Pipunachak, the winter spirit, is what they refer to as Pluto, Biopiskoachak, Mercury, Bishim. All these ones have, when you take a look at any language dictionary, it's not a dictionary, it's a poor translation of our language. And when I talk about the shortening of language, we say Bishim. The longer version sounds like this. Now to bring that to light, to understand it, the one that puts the finishing touches on Creator's creation. That's why we honor it, So it's in this time, this next universe, there's a friction here that occurs. This one spins counterclockwise. We understand that the term Musum and Kukum comes from here. These terms are really poorly translated into English language. Musum is not a grandfather. It's not a physical being. It's a spiritual being. And what they refer to this Akukum is not a grandmother. The longer versions to these sound like this. Umusi testamageo. That's what a Musum is. The one that feels on behalf of what you carry in your spirit. That's why when you see these rocks, they say, dancing in Musum. A kukum is not a grandmother. The language articulates this, ka kukumat achagwa. So what this literally means is a spiritual comforter. And this is what we call upon on our ceremonies. We sing about them. There's a friction that occurs here where you see these ones colliding like this. That's where you see meteor showers, shooting stars, meteorites, because we're so connected to this world. So it's in this time when these two make connections, we sing about that. We're connecting because the sound of this energy coming out is what creates the opening to that next world. Over here, this next world spins this way. We call these ones There is no English term for this. It's the spiritual world. And these are the ones, for a lack of a better term, I can only use the angel world, the spiritual world. This next world over here, this universe, we don't know of this world until we go home. This is where our Creator sits. If we knew about this, we wouldn't have to have faith. So how is faith? What is faith? In order to have faith, you're going to have hope. Hope before you can attain faith. I remember the only time I used to pray when I was sitting in a 8x4 cell, say, oh God, help me get out of this, I see a lot of people at the casino. Come on, God, Even at bingos, come on, God, one more number, They pray. And it's not about physical, it's about spiritual things that you require in your life. This is where the term the elders use this ka, ki, se, mu, win. Ka, gi, se, mu, win. It's the prayer. It is the prayer. And it's in this time, this is how we are to conduct our ceremonies. 4 days, 4 rounds, 4 singings. We always move with this law. Always. It's in this time that I want to take you, because we don't have much time. Like I said, this is the Big Dipper. We call this Wastesicoot. And again, everything that has 7 stars has such a sacred meaning to us. You guys take a picture of that? The next one here I want to show you is the Little Dipper into the east. This was the animal that had brought the people down from the trees. We call this we call these Uchegok, the fisher. And there are fishers around in your community. Because this summer I said, what is that? Noel, what's it? I said, stop. It was a fisher that was crossing the road. It looks like a big weasel, eh? So this one here is what our sacred teacher, they call this the Star of Orion. We call this one Wisagechak, that you walk in 2 worlds. I can go on with these ones. That this is the male and this is the female, the care of life. These 3 stars tell you that you carry 3 things. Your mind, body, and spirit. And you only get these once. Once you destroy them, they will never be given to you again. If you lose an arm, another arm's not going to grow back. If you fry your brain, another one will not be given to you. Same as your life. You only have one chance. And that's the reason why we sought our elders, the white-haired ones, that know how to live this long. This one tells you about the two sides that we live in. There's a female side of us and a male side. This is where Niitim comes from, my sister-in-law, Kititiman, that you help carry the load and the responsibilities to your family, eh? These 4 stars talk about Nehil Pigiswin, that you have to utilize your language in ceremonies and speaking to Creator. A horse will never borrow a moose's language and thinking that Creator will adhere to that. A skunk will never borrow a dog's language. So that's what we're specifically designed. And where he always tells us is he's pointing the way home to this world. That's where he's pointing for us, eh? So it's in this time that we know that the fire was given, Iskuteo, the creation of life, and the women are the keepers of this. We know that Mistapeo is going to begin to be seen. There was a prophecy that was told about this one. They called him, today they call him Sasquatch or Bigfoot. Our people's spirits will begin to reawaken once they begin to see this one, because it's a spirit. They can't capture it. They'll see it, eh? It means that he's coming back to reawaken the spirits of our people. The turtle, of course, we hear so much about this. This human anatomy that we always wear about creation. You see these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. I think that's 13, yeah? Talks about the 13 moon cycles. And how many days are in a moon cycle? How many days are in a moon cycle? 28? You see, you wear this human anatomy on your fingers. See these little squares here? So 3, 6, 9, 12, 13, 14. You see all the little crevices here? 14 and 14 when it transitions again. That's 28 days. You're a part of this. Your human anatomy is part of this. And within this one here, how we follow the ceremonies are here. This dipper, it tells you when certain things occur. We know how to read the skies. Right now, even the birds utilize this. All animals utilize this. Everything, even the grass and the trees utilize this. We now, in the springtime, we know that the Creator is blessing all these birds that we are to be spiritually fed, utilizing the birds. Next is summer. We know that Creator has blessed us with an abundant way of life. All the berry medicines, every medicine is growing. And this is when we do the big lodges, the horse dance, the chicken dance, the sun dances, the powwows. All these ones are done here. And in the fall time, when this dipper is like this, it tells us this is the time to harvest the four-legged animals. Again, in the winter time, it's up right here that we are supposed to stay dormant. This is when we tell our creation stories. We speak about our brother, Wisagechak. So this is how I began to discover of regaining what Creator intended me to be without the alcohol or drugs. How many of you, when coming off of drugs, and especially a hangover, how many of you guys feel this loneliness? Do you ever get so lonely? Well, the spiritual in touch has to be there. What is of the Spirit? That loneliness drives, and that's the reason why I had my children, my partner, good home, I had my job, but I still felt this loneliness. Creator had given us 4 things. He had given us a spirit. He had given us a body. And he had given us a mind, a brain. Out of all these species of the winged ones, the insects, the trees and plants, the fish, we were given something special. Creator only gave the birds and everything else a spirit, body, and a mind. We were given something special. And this is what we call, in our language, we call this pawagan, a spiritual helper. He had given us a spiritual helper. And this spiritual helper is the one that said, don't do this. He always talks to you. Don't do this. But I want to do it, because it's fun. He always tries to help us. When we become sick, he's the one that helps us. This is the traveler that travels and dreams. It's always traveling. Many of you experience deja vu, eh? Wow, man, I've been here before. I've seen this place, I dreamt about it, This is what your pawagan does. This is what really defines us, who we are. Nehewak, that we are, defines us as 4 things. So this is what happens. Come and help me out here. I'm going to serve as his pawagan. I'm going to be a spiritual helper. Stand here. Once alcohol or drugs enter him, what this spiritual helper does is it comes out of you. It doesn't want to be in there because it's very toxic in there. And the prolonged use, it steps away because, it's dirty in there. And prolonged, it just leaves. They call this episigosian. And what happens is that it's not returning. So many times we go and try and get our loved ones from the city that are living on the street. We bring them home, wash them up, give them jobs, give them homes. They go right back to it. They prefer to live on Skid Row. There are now ceremonies that are conducted to call the spiritual helper home. Once it's clean, that's why your elders tell you, be clean at least 4 days before you do ceremonies. Here, the 4th day, your loneliness, your depression goes away from utilizing that, eh? Thank you. So that's what I'm here to share with you, is that in order to recover, don't limit yourself to just 12 steps. Help yourself. And I want to also really stress Don't go on a healing journey, for you'll never find it. Many people that speak, I say, I've been on my healing journey for the past 48 years. When are you ever going to heal, you know? But I do encourage you to go on a learning journey. Allow yourself to learn. Because along that line, I was like this. Why I show you these star charts today is you need to begin to look up. This is where the answer is at. Not over there, not in programs. Connect to up here, and you'll see a difference. Because we need our people to recover. We need our elders. We need you. Get there. You ones that are listening, we need you. We need you to help guide us in this recovery. And you have a lot of love and kindness that we desperately need. So with that said, I want to thank you guys for listening to me. It's always a pleasure for me to share of where I came from. You know, the toughest part is to now live, you know. That's, you know, without, you don't become immune. It's a struggle. But that struggle is real, you know, and that's what life is. It's real, and it's always going to be struggle. So, Winanas komittagok kagip man to tawiek. At sinagapieg yugatagok. Mina kawigitom kawap mittanano. One day we'll cross paths. There's no such word as in our language as goodbye, say. We'll always cross paths. So I thank you for lending me your ears this morning. I ask Creator to continue to bless you in your journeys, eh? And I only live in Lucky Man, narrow way, so if you guys want to reconnect on a single basis, you know, you can get a hold of me through your contact. Demi there, she has my number. So, with that said, hi.